That's going to be helpful for people to understand, because most finance companies don't want to take the thing that they're financed back. That there's a good chance that they will either be able to assign it, novate it, give you a new agreement, or even find another finance company to refinance it out. Right, Shaun, obviously one of the things we're going to do for the channel now is we're going to start talking about some real life jobs that are going on. We don't want to know specifics about names of directors or company names, but what have we got on at the moment? We don't even need to give dates. Give me some examples of what we've been working on this year.
So, job on at the moment, mate. We've got a couple that wants to go into liquidation, right? They're in the restaurant industry.
Okay.
They're still trading at the moment.
Right.
So still trading. Debt-wise, they've got HMRC, 127k. Okay.
Okay.
They've got a finance company, circa around 12k. Another debt with a personal guarantee of around 14k.
Okay, right. So let me ask a few questions. The HMRC debt,
are
they in a time to pay arrangement at the moment?
No.
They're not in a time to pay?
No.
Have they been in a time to pay arrangement?
They've been in one and failed.
Okay, right. So what I'm assuming HMRC are going to be ramping up their enforcement. So what's really important for this business owner is if they're going to do something, they're on the clock a little bit, because what I'm seeing at the moment with HMRC, number of things that are happening. HMRC are sending things called notice of requirements. So let's say that a business owes them 120 grand. What they're then doing is sending them a letter saying, I know you owe us 120 grand, but I want another 100 grand as a security deposit.
Yeah.
And what that really is a precursor to a winding up petition. Yeah. And then, you know, some stage in the future, a winding up petition. If a winding up petition gets issued on this company, the problem is it's going to be very hard to solve. They could go to court and try and get an adjournment, but if the winding up petition gets advertised, it'll be common knowledge and the bank account will get frozen. Yeah. Another problem that I've seen in that industry over these last few months is where HMRC are actually going in and levying, taking a Control of Goods Act.
Yeah.
So that's where they go. Obviously, it doesn't happen overnight, this. It's like they've been trying to get the money for some time, but an agent will go in there, they will go around with a clipboard, they'll take a list of everything that's owed, and they'll get them to sign it. And from that point, HMRC own them assets.
Yeah, okay.
And like, the director can't do a deal with the HMRC. I had one last week. They owe 200,000 quid. HMRC has gone in, they've levied against all the goods, they've rang us going, right, well, we want to buy them back. I'm like, Mr. Director, you don't own them anymore. And we got the HMRC agent on the phone to try and do a deal. I mean, I knew it was a fruitless exercise. And they said, no, we are coming back in 2 weeks and we're going to sell them at auction. And if you want to turn up to the auction to try and buy them off us, that's fine. But the problem they've got is if you get all the tables and chairs and kitchen equipment moved out of a restaurant, the business is over. Yeah. So go on, we've got an issue with HMRC. What's the finance agreement on?
Well, it's on some of the assets.
Okay.
It's on some of the assets that they've got.
But presumably they are secured on the assets, so if they don't pay them off, they'll just come and take the assets?
Yes, they'll come and take them.
Okay, what else do they owe?
They've got suppliers, they're all pretty much up to date there, mate. That's pretty much it.
What about bounce back loan or C-bills?
No bounce back loan or C-bills on this one.
Okay, let's look at the options then. I think I remember this one. Is there an intercompany loan as well?
Yes.
How much is that for?
9 grand.
9 grand. Any overdrawn loan accounts?
Overdrawn, no, that's actually 0.
Okay, so what this director would do, you've told me that to get to A to B, they want to buy the assets and start again.
They do, yeah.
So one of the options would be an administration. I'm not convinced this is an admin.
Yeah.
You know, is there any staff involved?
There's 10.
Are they taking all the staff over?
They want to take them over, yeah.
Okay, so they're going to pay all the staff over. Because if you do that, by the way, people who are watching, if staff are owed redundancy and the business can't afford to make the staff redundant, they can't afford to pay the redundancy, the holiday entitlement, the notice pay, and you go through a liquidation, the government will step in and pay the staff. So they've got 10 staff that they want to take over. How much are the assets worth on the balance sheet?
On the balance sheet, they were sitting at 12k.
£12,000. Okay,
Yeah.
so it's not really justifiable to do an administration in this scenario, because it's a restaurant business. Who owns the lease?
It's in the actual personal name,
Okay.
not in the business name.
Right, good. Because one of the problems that you've got in hospitality is if you liquidate a business and the lease is in the business's name,
Yeah.
you've got to then speak to the landlord and see if the landlord will give you a new lease or assign the lease. Okay,
Yeah.
so they've got it in the personal name. So I'm assuming what you've had done here is an independent
Yeah.
valuation, right? So you will have spoken to an independent valuer, put the directors with them, and come up with a valuation.
Yeah.
Right, so on the valuation, what is the variance? What's the in situ value? What's the ex situ value?
The in situ value was at 5k.
Okay.
Ex situ, mate, was at 2.1.
So what people, just so they understand here, right, when you get a valuation done, an in situ value is what the agent believes it's really worth to you as a business. You know, that's around what you should be paying it for. Ex situ is what he believes that he will get at auction if he comes down, takes all that stuff and sells it. So as you can see, there's a difference. It's 2,100 ex situ, 5 grand in situ. Now, when you're doing these things called pre-packs, like their idea is to liquidate the business, but before they liquidate the business, they're going to sell the assets to their new company. Okay, so I'm hoping that their offer is they're buying them assets for close to 5 grand.
Yeah.
What's the figure?
£4.5.
£4,500 as a small discount. And is the agent happy with that? As the agent signed that off?
Yeah, what we've done is when we got the offer, we had to clear it by them first.
Perfect.
To make sure that he's happy with that.
Excellent. Yeah. So obviously we'll have brought one of the insolvency practitioners in at this stage. The insolvency practitioner is aware of what's happening, but obviously they can't do any thorough investigations until they have been appointed. So what the solution here then is, the business is insolvent, the business is going to go into liquidation, and in the liquidation they will write off their HMRC debt, that will disappear. They have a lease. There's no issue with a lease because it's in their personal names, and they presumably they will just sublet it to their new company. And they are paying close to market value for their assets.
Yeah.
So nobody can really criticise them from this point for starting a new business again, and actually no one can criticise them that they've taken assets for less than they're worth.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's go on to another problem that we've brought up, is the intercompany loan of 9,000.
Yes.
Because the company that owes them that 9,000 on appointment, the insolvency practitioner is duty bound to try and recover that money.
Yeah.
Obviously, though, when they're trying to recover money, they've got to consider, well, is there any money to recover? What's the balance sheet of this business that owes the money?
So on that one, mate, it's actually, they're not trading. There's no fixed assets under there.
No.
And there's no cash at the bank as well.
Okay, and I'm assuming that you've spoken to the insolvency practitioner, discussed this with them.
That, yeah.
And what was their response?
They can't get anything out of them. So they can't go after the 9k because she did say if there was something in the company, like if there's assets or there's money, it'd be a different story. We'd be able to do a deal. So
you can't get blood out of a stone?
Yeah.
Okay, so really this intercompany loan, what people need to understand is the way we operate is we're doing all this work without asking for any money, aren't we?
Yeah.
So the directors understand what their problem is, what issues there are with liquidation.
Yeah.
So Shaun, this business had some assets that were under finance.
Yes.
What's happened with those?
So then they've spoken to the finance company. They're going to novate those assets over to the new co.
So presumably there was, because one of the things that a liquidator is going to look at is anything that gets transferred out of that business, that it's not been sold under value.
Yeah.
So were these assets pretty much worth what the finance was outstanding?
There was actually less.
So there was underwater?
There was underwater, mate, yeah.
That's going to be helpful for people to understand, because most finance companies don't want to take the thing that they're financed back.
Yeah.
That there's a good chance that they will either be able to assign it, novate it, give you a new agreement, or even find another finance company to refinance it out. Okay, brilliant. So from what was a really challenging, and by the way, in hospitality, we get this all the time, don't we? It's been a bloodbath. You know, COVID, they were the first to shut down, the last to open up. Cost of living crisis, people haven't got enough money to spend. I mean, let's dig into the problems. What sort of, because I think when a business uses one of these processes to start again, they really don't want to just be kicking the can down the road and going through another insolvency. Listen, insolvencies happen, lots of businesses fail. What have these directors learned from this failure?
So, when I last spoken to them, they were quite honest with that. It was them that brought it up. So what had happened is, the reason they got into the state they was actually in is they didn't have an accountant, right? They weren't doing, you know, they were doing the books themselves.
You mean, did they add an accountant, but they didn't have a bookkeeper?
Yeah, they didn't. They just weren't. Yeah, sorry, the bookkeeper.
Let me jump into that so people understand, right? Accountants, okay, if you're getting the basics from an accountant, that is about as much use to you as a chocolate tea cosy. Statutory accounts and filings are a snapshot of your business at some stage in the past. It's too late to make a decision, and people think that an accountant should be giving them this, that, and the other. But if you're paying about £2,000 a year, you're just getting the basics. You're just keeping yourself out of prison. And what you're saying is now they understand the importance of management information, profit and loss, cash flows, money coming in, money coming out. And people don't understand that, mate. They don't understand that an accountant is there just to do the statutory stuff most of the time. If you want them to do monthly management accounts, you're going to have to pay them to do it. Most accountants don't want to do it. They're not set up to do it, so they need a book. So they're going to bring a bookkeeper in now, so on a monthly basis they can...
You know what's what.
And obviously these guys have had an issue, a big tax liability. Let's not make light of that. Owing 100 grand plus to the revenue is not to be sniffed at. One tip that businesses should be doing, they should have different bank accounts. Now I use Starling, and Starling have something called spaces. So I've got a current account, I've got a tax account, I've got a savings account, and I've got a VAT account. So the example, the easiest example, and the numbers will change for each business, but you know, I like things simple. £1,000 plus VAT comes into a business. 200 quid is VAT. Put it in a VAT account. You're left with 1,000. Put another 200 quid in a tax account. So your business has got 800 quid to play. You may be watching that going, oh, well, you're putting too much in your VAT account, you're putting too much in your tax account. But for me, it's better to have more than enough to pay that tax bill when it comes around. And that's a lesson that I've learned the hard way. So listen, what other questions did these guys have?
So another one, because of the industry that they're in with a restaurant, is how soon can they reopen?
Okay, and start to trade in their new restaurant. Okay, so let's just cover a few bases. The lease is in their personal name, so presumably they sublet to their insolvent business. And they're going to need to write a new lease for their new company. There's no issues with section 216 here, is there? There's like use of a prohibited name.
No, they want a complete rebrand, restart.
Cool. So people that are watching this, just so you're aware, when you put business through an insolvency process, a liquidation, you can't use the same or similar name for a period of 5 years, unless you apply to court, you already have a trading business with a similar name that's been trading over 12 months, or you buy the trading style from the liquidator and you advertise it in the London Gazette. But there's a rebrand here, so there's no issues with a prohibited name. Okay. And the staff, the 10 staff are getting two paid over.
They're going over,
So as long as their new company has a insurance, a way to take money, bank account, merchant terminal, staff have been transferred over, you could essentially work up until the Friday on the insolvent business, open up on the Saturday in the new company.
Okay.
And then you've got the shell of an insolvent company that needs liquidating. Obviously, these things, these principles that we're talking about here, they're just general principles. People need to get specific. They want to find out their situation. They've got to pick the phone up, haven't they? Anything else you want to go through on this one?
they mentioned obviously with the assets as well. So yeah, you say for example, right? They shut down Friday, they start Saturday. Another question was, can we use these assets now?
Point, yeah. Okay, so I forgot to cover that. So when you're transferring assets out of an insolvent business, anything that you take out of a business when it's becoming insolvent is going to be seriously scrutinised by the insolvency practitioner, and they're looking for, have you took something that's undervalued? Have the agent said that they're worth £5,000 in situ, £2,000 at an auction. Well, if they was to take them and pay 500 quid for them, that would be classed as a transaction under value, and that insolvency practitioner would overturn it and either take the assets back or sue them. The fact that they are buying them for £4,500, which is just under and the agent's written a letter of recommendation, then what they would do to formalise this sale is, obviously it could go to a solicitor, that would be quite expensive, but the easiest thing for them to do is raise an invoice from insolvent business to their new company for £4,500 plus VAT, and then it's been sold on an invoice basis.
Brilliant.
And then when the liquidator is appointed, the liquidator will collect that money in. And in some cases, the liquidator might even give them terms to liquidate the business. So what was it cost them to charge to liquidate the business? £5,000 plus VAT?
£5,000 plus VAT.
Okay.
And then the assets purchased as well.
Excellent.
On top.
Now, I think that seems to be a really good conclusion to what was a huge problem for this hospitality business. Okay.
Massive one,
Listen, if you're out there watching this and you want the specifics of what the options are for your business, you've got to pick the phone up. Listen, we're free, we're independent, we've got no judgment, we're doing this for years and years. We've got hundreds and hundreds of reviews on Trustpilot. My name is Chris Worden, I'm from Direct Affairs. Thanks for watching, God bless.